Hello, everyone. Welcome to CSA Conversations. This time with Martin Roll. He is a very well-known global business strategist, brand strategist. He's a senior advisor to Asian firms, to Fortune 500 big companies, family-owned businesses. He has the author of the best-selling book, Asian Brand Strategy, which he has written in 2015, and I think the co-author of another book, Future Branding, with two new books in the pipeline we are going to talk about. Thank you, Martin, for being with us today. How are you?
I'm good. My pleasure. Good to be on the show with you. I'm good. And yourself?
Thank you. Myself is good as well. We try to survive in the pandemic times. And how is Denmark? How do you cope with the pandemic? Yeah.
Denmark is doing well, but like all countries in Europe and worldwide, we have closed borders, but we are getting back to some sort of normality with vaccines and kind of things coming into the EU. So I'm hopeful. There's kind of light at the end of the tunnel here.
That's great. We are all hopeful that things will come back to the normal, to as normal as possible. We can say it.
Absolutely. There'll be a new normal, I guess.
Yeah. I know you have a significant experience in numerous areas, including, strategic transformation, strategy, leadership, family-owned businesses, and global branding, especially with some Asian firms worldwide. You were a senior advisor to management consultancy firms like McKinsey, and you have your own business, Martin Roll Companies. And you are also teaching and advising and mentoring in business schools, management schools like in SEAD. So with that experience, I just wanted to start the first question with the marketing concept. And I just wonder, how did marketing evolve from the classical Philip Kotler time? When I was doing my MBA, he was the father of the marketing. We were all being taught about the concept of 4 Ps, segmentation, targeting, customer-centric products and services, 7 forces that shape the business companies. And I know that the marketing evolved a lot from that time onwards. He even now recommends, he has bold recommendations regarding the minimum wage, like social responsibility, environmental regulations. So what do you think that the global branding, the branding concept evolved, especially taking into consideration the evolution of the marketing, taking into consideration of socially responsible branding and marketing?
Very good question and very interesting one. I think a lot of things has happened, but at the outset, branding is still the same thing, because basically what you do with a brand, you are explaining to people, to your audience, to stakeholders, to society, what makes my brand different, better, faster, more reliable than your brand. So that's kind of the notion of why we brand in the first place. A couple of changes. First of all, I've always advocated that brands should sit at the boardroom level. And I think back to Kotler's time, no offense, branding was a linear function in a marketing department. It was somehow a add-on that we stuck to a product and to a service. And it worked very well because it started to explain who I were and what my brand did for you. Now came technology with social media and our various platforms and e-commerce. You got consumers who are very engaged. Everyone is on social media, journalists on social media, everything is digital. And we have a world which has become much more concerned about the climate, humanity, sociology, rise, poverty, all of that. So there's so many issues going on. This is a call for companies to do good. So I think actually brands can do a lot when it comes to social good. So that pressure maybe came from society in the first place, but I think in the last 10 or 15 years, companies have realized we can actually make a difference. So compared to the times where we stuck something on a brand and we claim to be better and faster and tasting better, whatever, suddenly brands have a much, much larger role in society where we can't pollute, we can innovate for technologies that can do something for water treatment for the better on people. So I think somehow companies find themselves as much more intertwined into society with that notion of the consumers and stakeholders and media for that matter. They're much more involved. I've always asked my clients, one very good test is, can you stand the test of BBC really looking into what you're doing? And if you can answer that with a blank yes, I think you're at least you're on a good journey for a hopeful future.
Yeah, those are interesting developments nowadays, especially when we see the pandemic on our paths, like in everybody's life in one way or another. You do also lots of
it's also, I could just add to that and finish that. It's also that it used to be that brands and marketing were run by a subset of people in the organization. What you've seen in the last probably 10 or 20 years is that you had the entire organization rallied around the cause of the brand. So this is everyone in the company. Yes, it starts with the CEO, and it's often run by the CMO or whoever takes care of the brand strategy and the rollout. But in the end, you're going to rally your 300,000 people or your 30 people in your company, in your organization, even at the government level, to bring that brand to life. So suddenly it becomes part of your leadership. And this is where branding has changed dramatically. It's not something that lives in a silo. It kind of encompasses everything in the organization. This is where I think this is probably the most dramatic, but also very good development when it comes to branding over the last 10 or 15 years.
I see. And we also see in the world that Asian brands became among the major big players in the global economy. What do you think their secrets of success in that perspective?
There were two secrets of success. The first one were that they were late to the table. I came to Asia in the early of this millennium. I settled in Singapore back in 2000, and I can guarantee you back at that time, nobody talked about Alibaba, nobody talked about Singapore, and nobody really talked about Asia. People even thought I was crazy leaving Europe after my MBA at INSEAD to go to what the Brits would refer to as the Far East. I called it Asia because Asia was very modern already. But the Asian brands weren't there. There was Asian companies with very low-cost produced products, but they were not Nike. They were not BMW. Most of the brands were Western. The so-called global brands all came from the Western world, France, Italy, US, and all of that. The Asian firms suddenly got a little more confident, and they realized that we can't just compete on price. We need to compete, because competing on price is a downward spiral. I mean, it's a never-ending story. So we need to compete on value, have a position in the market, meaning something for the global consumers, meaning regional consumers in the first place, because they didn't go to America as the first strategy. So the first secret were that they realized we can capture more value by building a brand, by standing for something, because we will have a value increment by having brand equity in the company. And that was new, and they had to learn about it. What is a brand? How do you build it? How do you rally the people? And one notion is, what makes you different? You're going to be the 17th mobile brand. We only heard about Toyota out of Japan, but why would you, as a Korean car maker, try to compete with the global brand? So the management paradigm was the first secret, had to change. It had to change from an engineering and a production mindset to a value mindset, to a branded mindset, to a mindset where it was the consumer first and not what you were able to produce, but what meant something to the consumer. Now, the second way, the second secret is still playing out, and you see it right now. Probably the best examples are some of the Chinese brands where, say, 20 years later, and I followed that journey because I've worked with most of the companies in most regions of Asia and worked both with the owners and management. Now they are realizing that the world is looking at them. Asia is hot. The future is Asia. Trends are coming out of Asia. We are following Asian popular culture. We are studying Asia. We are embracing Asia. We go there for holiday. We go there for work. So Asia suddenly has a voice on the global level, and you need to infuse that into the Asian brand context. And therefore, where you maybe originally, maybe in all fairness, copied Hollywood a bit, and you copied the beauty of the Parisian kind of luxury and kind of cream brands and skincare brands and fashion from Italy, to be frank, and maybe the German car makers. Asian companies became much more confident, and now they're realizing that Asia is trendy. So what we do with Grab and Traveloka and Alibaba and the Tencents and the Singapore Airlines is actually in great demand by the so-called global consumer. So suddenly the Western brands are not only sitting at the table, they are slowly but steadily starting to take the lead and setting trends instead of maybe following trends.
I see. So that's interesting. you also published a couple of books in the past, and you will, I think, publish a new management strategy book, especially about family office strategy this year, if I'm not wrong, in 2021. Can you take us through the book? Is it ready to get published or still?
I'm actually, yeah, it's funny because I do branding, but I also do a lot of strategy and transformation, and I do family business and family office. So I'm actually publishing, in fact, 2 books. And the first one is called Family Business Strategy. So if you are a business family and, 70% of the world companies are family owned, how do you create a strategy and how do you execute a strategy in a family owned companies? And for us, we are like, what's a big fuss about a family owned business? But most of us are engaging with family firms. We use brands, products, and services from family owned brands. But from their perspective, how do you create a good strategy? The second book is going to be about family office strategy. So you might be a business family that owns a business, then you exit it, or you accumulate wealth, or you find yourself having a portfolio of businesses. And then comes the trick that you have generations coming in because your son and your daughter and your cousins start to grow up and might have a role in the business. And so you often become intergenerational because you have various generations involved as owners, as managers, sitting on the board on the government's level. And that's where family offices can play a role. Family offices used to be historically like a wealth management tool. It was like a holding company, typically protecting the family's wealth and assets over generations. But family offices have become much more active owners, proactive owners, and they used to be very passive in their investment profile. But now you see them doing direct investment so much that lately, if you picked up news, even the venture capital and the private equity world are kind of now looking at the rise of the family offices because of all the rise of the wealth. So the story short is these 2 books, Family Business Strategy for the business owned by families, and the Family Office Strategy books are kind of 2 sets of the same story. And I want to put that straight because I think there is a need to help business families, meaning the owners of businesses owned by families, but also the family offices, to what are the best practices? How do we handle succession, next generation? How do we renew ourselves? Many companies in the world are family owned, around 70%. Many of them spans generations. One of the eldest one is a Japanese bed and breakfast that spans back from 1716. And then you just go on and on. So many companies in Europe, for example, Asia included, but in Europe, many companies are more than 200 years old. And the success of that were that they had a good strategy. They were good at succession. They were renewing owners and generations all the time successfully. And they were competing all the time. And they went through wars and cholera and pandemics. I mean, there were pandemics back in history, but they're still here. And why is that? What are the secret sauce to that? So these 2 books hopefully is going to be like a voice. It's going to be an add-on to the world of business families and family-owned businesses, which is also a topic that I'm teaching at the various business schools, and I'm very excited about that topic. And it adds nicely to branding and to strategy and transformation, because it's almost like one partner that I work with in a management consulting firm. I mean, he said, family business is not a topic. Family business is a compilation of topics. So it's almost like you can use your entire toolbox. You can use your psychology toolbox. My mentoring experience, I tend to work with clients mostly at the boardroom level and owner level, Fortune 100, Fortune 1000, and a lot of family-owned firms. And that entire toolbox and the experience that I built up, you can use that when you work with family firms, because they need most of it, because it is a holistic conversation once you deal with these issues.
That's true. And succession planning especially is a huge topic, right? Not only in family businesses, but in many professional, well-established businesses as well. If there is a good succession planning program for the next generation.
Exactly. And it really raises the current owners and the current management perception and attitude towards succession. Are we gonna do succession, whether you're institutionally owned by Wall Street or fully controlled by a family? Do we do it based on merit? Do we do it based on favor? Do we do it based out of, in certain cultures in the world, you still see a preference for male successors? Do we base, because this is what we used to do? It used to go to the oldest child. It used to be spread among the kids. how are you going to do? Are we going to hire an outsider? Should we have a professional CEO, which is always a point of it's a very contagious point, because I mean, you may, as kids in a family, want to be the CEO and the chairman, but you might realize, are we better off hiring someone from the outside? You're still going to own the business. You may still sit on board. Some family firms and some business families, and I work with quite a lot of them worldwide, they decide that they won't be operators, meaning we can own the business. You can sit on the board, you can have a governance role, you can be a board of director, you can end up being the chairman, but you will never be an operational leader and CEO. Why? Because if you look at the world, it's almost like impossible not to find someone who is better than you are. So why don't we hire the best person for money? And that's a very contagious issue, and it's very emotionally loaded, and that's where my role comes in as a mentor very often. I work with a lot of family-owned businesses worldwide, and it's a balancing act. But you can also create very meaningful differences for those business families.
Yeah, which brings me as well back to the famous worldwide question: how can we just get more women in the boardroom?
Very interesting, very interesting point. I just made a comment here in Denmark. Now we are like end of April. Danske Bank, which is the biggest Danish bank, just appointed a new CEO, and that was a male CEO. He's a very good one. He's recruited from the inside. But I made a comment. It might have been time to get a woman CEO, not for the sake of having a woman, but it's just when you know there's a recent HBR Harvard Business Review article out. Once you have diversity on your board, you actually lower the risk of the company. I mean, yes, you might have better results, but you're also mitigating against risk because you have a diversity of thought, a diversity of opinions, right? So I think getting women on board, I mean, there are two ways of doing it. You can either do it through quotas. France did that originally. They actually had quota. I remember it was 40. I think you need to have 40% of women in any publicly listed company. You see that around the world, by the way. Sometimes it helped to get the agenda going. Of course, it has to be based on merit. So promoting women to the boardroom is an easy thing. You can just pick someone. But what you want to have, you want it to be done on a professional way and being done on merit. That means it starts much, much earlier. It starts with the lowest intake. Whoever you're going to recruit at the business associate level, out of business school, out of university, out of colleges, you're going to recruit more women, and you're going to give them the ability and the capability and the policies and the leeway, also because sometimes families, typically in the 20s and 30s, might come in the way for a few years. So how do you construct a journey so women are more likely to stay on, and also when it gets tougher? Because once you become a leader, this is where it becomes more lonely. That's a part of it. It's not only about working many hours, but it's also about office politics, standing the test of time, standing the test of pressure from the teams and, in the end, stakeholders and owners. And how do you make it conducive for anyone, whether you're men and women, to climb that ladder and actually stay on all to the very day where you end up and you see yourself in the boardroom being the chairman, being the CEO, being part of the board of directors, right? And I think it's coming. I think there is a wave worldwide, and you see it in all the studies in terms of diversity and results. And as I said, it's not only about the top line and being successful and growing, it's also about mitigating against risk. And we can say, are women better off than men? I don't think so. But diversity of thoughts, and that's also what most of the studies have illustrated. So I'm very hopeful, and I think it's hopefully we get to a point where we don't discuss gender issues. It's just a natural balance of whoever is best for the job, whether you're in the boardroom or in the team room or the mid level, doesn't matter where you are. So I hope we get past this discussion actually as soon as possible.
We need to talk about the results, the outcome. How can we more, all of us, be more, environmentally sustainable as companies, as employees, as brands? Those should be the questions we need to talk about in the very, very near future. And my final question is for this, basically, and what can we just do at the executive level and at the employee level to be more environmentally sustainable when we work? It's everybody talks about the same thing. They just take this as part of their social responsibility program, but we need to really, really talk about what's the real sustainability that needs to be in branding, in strategy, and in the execution.
I think sustainability and, sustainability goals, United Nations goals, and you see them everywhere, right? It is really coming in it did start at the boardroom level. And you also had it from the grassroots because employees are also ordinary family members. So we all have a stake in sustainability and the future of the planet, right? And I think it's important not to look for one golden solution. It's not about a post on the wall. It's not about the chairman advocating that we want to be more sustainable and cut carbon emission by X% in 5 years. Yeah. It's a journey, and it might be a journey that never ends. And we need to look at the granularity of it. Why? Because it starts everywhere. It starts in the kitchen in the company. It starts in the warehouse. It's part of supply chain. It's part of employee behavior. What about the lorries? Do they drive electricity? At least when we, deliver goods into the big cities. If you're driving into Mexico City or to Seoul, Copenhagen, and Frankfurt, do we do it through electrical cars? I mean, there's so many ways. One company cannot change the world. It can only put a dent in the universe. But every company and every employee in a company and every leader have to look at this company because we are in water treatment, this company because we are the delivery guys, this company because we transport people from A to B. How can we put a dent in the universe? How can we contribute to this agenda? So I think, because if you really seek to change the world and you get stressed by the fact that this very company, and we may be 100,000 employees, we might be 1,000 employees, we might be a startup, this is a combined effort of everyone in the world. So I think you also need to put your goals straight, and that this is how much that we can do. We'll work on it. We'll inspire other people, but you can work on so many levels. You can even educate people internally, because if you educate 100,000 employees in a company, and you find a lot of these firms worldwide, the derived impact of that by people advocating in local communities and the society at large, back in the families, kids back at school, you put that wave in motion, so it becomes like a natural thing for people. So I think business for good is a very big theme. For example, at INSEAD Business School, where I'm a distinguished fellow, working with family business as a force for good is a major theme for INSEAD, as it is for many other business schools, educating younger people, younger talent to think sustainability, think world, think society, think humanity. So I think it's definitely here to stay. There's a major wave happening right now. But I think it's important to work it step by step, and not getting too stressed by the very big goals, because you may never get there. So you have to look at what can you achieve in your lifetime, which is meaningful.
Yeah. Martin, thank you so much for this insightful and lovely conversation, and hope to meet you in person as well one day somewhere in the world.
I look forward to that. I normally do my 40 plus countries every year, speaking and engaging as a senior advisor. So, and you're based in Dubai, and I often stop over in Dubai for business, and also occasionally for a bit of sun. So I would welcome to meet you either in Dubai, or it could be anywhere else.
Yeah,
you never
anywhere,
know.
in Turkey or in Copenhagen. That's true.
I would love to.
Have a nice day. Have a nice day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.